Imagine going to school in a bar, being one of the first residents of Boulder when it was still a small mining supply town, or helping construct Barker Dam in Netherland before there were paved roads. Take a step back in time to the late 1800s, when America was only just recovering from the Civil War and the gold rush was in full swing. This was the time of Hannah Barker, one of Boulder's most important historical figures.
Well, I love the story of Hannah Barker. She became a philanthropist in Boulder, was very active in the early days of Chautauqua, very active in setting up and caring for Columbia Cemetery. You name it, the early points around town she was involved in.
I think what's remarkable about Hannah is what is not so remarkable about Boulder, I suppose, in that she was a woman doing things that women didn't generally do then.
She kind of helped Boulder a lot because she donated a lot of land to different areas of Boulder, and then she started like a little neighborhood called Highland Land.
Hannah Barker began her life here as a school teacher up in the mountain towns, and then became the first woman to be a school teacher in what became the Boulder School District.
Hannah Barker was born in 1844. And though her place of birth is not known for certain, it is thought that she was born in Ireland and moved to America when she was only 6 years old. This was the time of the potato famine in Ireland, when great numbers of the Irish emigrated to the United States to escape conditions of terrible poverty and famine. By 1852, the history books say that Hannah was living in Springfield, Massachusetts. We know that in 1861, when she was about 19, she moved to the small town of Davenport, Iowa, where she became a school teacher until she was 23. In 1867, only 2 years after the Civil War had ended, Hannah resigned from her teaching position in Iowa and moved to the bustling mining town of Ward, just a few miles into the mountains above Boulder. Pause for a second and imagine what an intense life Hannah had already had. She had already moved halfway around the world in a time before airplanes or cars, and would have walked alongside a covered wagon for thousands of miles over harsh and unpopulated terrain just to get to Colorado. At that time, Colorado was not even a state. Boulder was only 300 people, and miners made up most of the population.
There is a common image of women as stay-at-home sorts who really found their desire of men to move, to be unsettling, and so on. And the problem with that is that, if anything, that walloping them with that, you'd better stay in your category, can actually create for a young woman, a woman in her teens or 20s, an even greater sense to do something now, before the whole marriage and domesticity thing closes in. So it's lucky for many, many, many children, both boys and girls in the United States to the second, that there's that kind of adventure in the spirit of young women, that they think, I'm going to go out and do so.
In Ward, Hannah continued her profession as a teacher, but here, in a rough mining town, school was much different. Hannah taught school in the local saloon because resources were so scarce. She would have taught all ages in one room, from first graders to high schoolers. This would have been very difficult not only for Hannah, but also for the students. Imagine trying to learn in a single room with all ages, studying different subjects. It would have been much more difficult than it is today. In 1869, just 2 years later, Hannah moved down to Boulder and became one of the first school teachers in the budding town.
What became the city of Boulder was first settled in February 1859 by a group of gentlemen who had come across the plains in search of gold. And for a variety of reasons, a group of them decided that they would found a supply town to supply the miners who were, up in the hills.
After teaching school for 8 years, Hannah married a prominent local businessman named Ezra Barker. Shortly after they were married, they moved into a home at 724 Arapahoe Road. The couple lived for 6 years in the house. In 1883, Ezra Barker died from pneumonia, and Hannah inherited his land holdings and real estate ventures and went on to become a successful businesswoman and developer in her own right.
By the time she met and married Ezra, she was 33, which was pretty, that was a bit older for a woman of that era to get married. So she was already well educated and an independent woman when she married Ezra. So one can imagine they were married for 6 years, and he was a very active and involved businessman with many real estate holdings. So one would suspect that she actually learned quite a bit from him about that world. But not a lot of women would necessarily take that on after their husband died. So I think that is notable, frankly, that she was both independent and continued to be very out in the society and very active in the community. We know that she was on the board of directors of the Boulder Bank. She platted the town of Highland Lawn, which later was annexed to the city of Boulder.
Hannah Barker left an indelible legacy on the town of Boulder, and her civic, business, and philanthropic endeavors made a significant impact on the community that Boulder is today. When Hannah Barker first came to Colorado, the town was a small mining supply town in the midst of the gold rush and in a time of westward expansion. By the time of her death in 1918, the U.S. had entered into World War I, and Boulder had electricity, paved streets, and cars. Today, Hannah's house still stands as an important reminder of Hannah Barker and other community leaders. Hannah held many intellectual and social gatherings here, where community leaders discussed important issues of the day.
What I realized fairly early in my career in city planning was how important it is to the identity of a place, to be able to have reminders of its history, that it didn't just spring full-blown, but had a sort of evolution over time. And it's a part of telling the story about a place and deepening our understanding of a place.
One very big source of our problems is that we can't think very well in time. We have excellent systems, GPS systems, that can move us around in space, and we still get lost from time to time, but we can rescue ourselves in space fairly well. And in time, we just are so incapable of thinking of the longer stretch of time. So that bedrock value of historic preservation, in my judgment, is that it stretches that part of the mind. It's almost like a workout machine or something. It just takes a mental capacity that's all knotted up and not capable of much expansion, and stretches that. So if you can take the people of 150 years ago seriously and see them as fully alive in their time, you've done something for your mind that, and your soul, I think, and your spirit, that allow you to sort of flip that unit of time forward and to think, okay, those people of the 1860s whose homes we are able to see and to walk into and to see as a place where real people live, if those people really existed, then the people 150 years from now, they're going to be real. They're going to be material.
Hannah Barker's house is an important asset to Boulder and will provide the community with a sense of its rich history. The house will help Boulder remember not only Hannah Barker and her contributions, but also the very history of Boulder itself.